This is the Agency Profit Podcast, the podcast for agency owners that want to run a more profitable business that doesn't depend on them. Introducing your host, CEO and co-founder of Parakeeto, Marcel Pettipaw.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Agency Profit Podcast. I always start the show by saying I'm extremely excited today to introduce you to our next guest, but this is the first time actually in the podcast history that we are having a repeat guest on the show, and it's for good reason. The person we have joining us today is truly one of the smartest minds that I know in the agency space. He's built an incredibly successful business himself, and now he's coaching other folks on how to replicate that success. And he's truly one of the best educators I know in this space. And so I'm extremely excited to welcome back to the show the founder of one of Canada's fastest growing digital agencies powered by search. And he's also the founder of $1 Million Agency and a professor at the Seneca College School of Marketing, Basu. Dev, welcome back to the show, man.
A, thank you so much for having me back. B, how am I supposed to live up to that intro?
You just answer the questions, and I'm sure everyone will agree with my analysis. So, Dev, I've given everyone a little bit of a taste of your background and where you come from, but why don't you tell us a little bit about your backstory, building Powered by Search, and kind of what you've built that business to today?
Yeah, for sure. So, Powered by Search was my second agency that I built up back in 2006, which seems like a lifetime ago. I was working for Microsoft and learned a bit about digital marketing over there and went on to build an agency for a Yellow Pages group affiliate. And so I was about 19 or 20 when I'd learned a lot about selling to lots of national franchise businesses and typically the types of businesses that, if you remember what the Yellow Pages even is, frankly. And then built that while I was in school up to a couple $1 million in run rate. And then when my business degree at University of Toronto basically finished, I said, hey, why not try out this entrepreneur thing for 6 months and see if it works? If it doesn't, I can always go back and try something else. And so I kind of invested in my own entrepreneurial MBA and jumped in at that point. I think it was about 19 or 20 years old. And so it started Powered by Search in 2009. We were one person in month one, two people in month two, three by month three. And that first year was a real whirlwind. I think we ended up closing the first year out at just shy of $500,000. And then it kept doubling from over there ever since. And primarily what we did was we worked on customer acquisition using SEO and PPC, starting with local businesses and then moving into national companies and franchise companies as well. And then we made a switch later on to working exclusively with B2B software companies. And that's what we do today. Company today does exceptionally well. It's a primary business for me, but I'm wanted and not needed in the business. And what we do is we help software companies who aren't growing fast enough, multi-million-dollar run rate, profitable since day one. It's enabled me to have an exceptional lifestyle and have a lot of fun while doing it and helping more people as well along that journey.
Amazing. So what we're going to dive into today is something that I absolutely love. It's something that you do with your clients, and you've been kind enough to kind of bring this framework public and bring it onto the show today. And it's an agency audit. And this is something that if you're listening, check the show notes. There's actually a worksheet that you can go download, and you can go through this audit with us live here on the show as we go through it. But this is one of the many ways that you have of identifying where the highest return on investment opportunities are for your clients and really helping them focus on the right things are going to move the needle for them. So before we dive into that, and while I give everyone a chance to go find that worksheet and get situated, why is this process of auditing the agency so important? And what is it about this audit that you think sets it apart and makes it particularly valuable?
Yeah, great question. If you don't know where you are and you know where you want to go, it's very hard to be able to get there. And so if you don't know what's broken, you don't know what to fix. And primarily, I think one of the key things that's difficult or broken about the traditional way that coaching is done as well is a guru mindset, which is usually like, hey, I took my agency to XYZ level and you should do exactly as I did to be able to get there. One of the things that you don't realize about that is something called survivorship bias, which is just that there's a combination of luck along with timing, along with some good business sense that usually gets to success. But it's very hard to replicate somebody else's playbook and follow the exact same steps that they did. We followed that with our early coaches, and we made some bad decisions, frankly. And as a result of that, I think we put together the audit to essentially take a framework that you can apply to any agency, but it doesn't have to be the same things that we did with ours at Powered by Search specifically. The second thing that's important about the audit is it's a self-assessment. So you can lie to everybody but yourself about the state of your business. And the third thing is we wanted to make it as accessible and easy as possible. So it'll only take you about 15 minutes to actually go through. If you actually pay attention and focus during that time, turn your phone off, turn off those notifications, and just kind of either print it out or we have it up as a Google Doc, so you can fill it out online as well. And it's a series of 9 questions that are very specifically worded to uncover both profit centers in your business as well as cost centers and things that you can then fine tune, because each one of these things are revenue accelerators that help you grow your agency as well. So that's why we put it together.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to dive in with you today on this. And I just want to double click on a point that you made earlier, which is something that I find myself saying more and more often as I spend more time, mentoring young entrepreneurs. And it's that a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the early days, get caught up in the what and the how. And they think that that's the thing that's difficult about entrepreneurship. But you mentioned it earlier, so much of it actually comes into the sequencing. It's not so much about the how to figure something out. That information in this day and age is usually pretty easy to get access to. You can make a phone call, you could Google search something, and it's not the most critical thing, but the sequencing and knowing what to focus on and when to focus on it is critical. And going through exercises like this is what helps you uncover what is the next logical step, what is the next place where we need to spend some time. So with all of that, if you're feeling stuck in your agency, or maybe you're not, and you just want to grow faster, you just want to get some clarity on where the opportunities are, we're going to dive into this audit. So the audit is broken down into 3 key buckets. What are those key buckets, Dev? And walk us through kind of how we get started here.
Yeah, so the audit is geared for a very specific purpose. It's going to help you find ways to make your first $1 million annual recurring revenue or annual revenue in your business, or it's going to help you find your next $1 million. And the way that we broke it down is this: if you want to think about growth in your agency, there are 3 things you need to do well. You need to have a way to attract the right kinds of leads and then turn them into clients. You need to have a way for converting them using a sales process that actually works, that has outputs like the right kind of pricing, the right kind of time frame that you work with them, and a process that actually gets from just having a conversation to turning them into a client. And then the third thing is delivery, and that is basically where you need to look at the way that you have either productized your IP and created a process for delivering results, a way for delegating and leveraging the talent that you actually have as well, and then a way for systemizing wins. I mean, if you think about every agency's got clients that they have slam dunk results for, and then ones that are absolute horror shows. So if you think about that, that just means that there's a lot of volatility in the business, meaning that you don't know if the next client coming through the door is going to be a slam dunk or it's going to be somebody who frankly crashes and burns and quits before the 3-month mark. And so you need a process for systemizing wins. And so we just kind of go through the way that you attract, the way that you convert, and the way that you deliver. Do those 3 things right, and then that sets up the next stage, which is the ability to scale. But we want to walk before we run. This is exactly how we kind of measure the way you market, sell, and deliver.
Awesome. So take us through the first step in the audit.
Yeah. So the thing that we're trying to go for is understanding how well you can scale. And it always starts with the attract portion, because if you don't have any leads, no one in your pipeline, then there are no clients to sell or do delivery work for. So the first thing we look for is narrowing your niche or your niche if you happen to be American. What we want to focus on in the question over here is how narrowly focused is your positioning, where you are seen as a specialist agency solving a specific problem for a specific kind of client. So all of those things together create this narrow sense of positioning. I'll draw an example for us at Powered by Search and how we think about this. We would position ourselves in close to the 9 or 10 mark. There's always room for improvement, but we only solve a specific type of problem, which is an inability to hit your trial or demo pipeline target. Who we do it for is growth stage B2B SaaS companies, software as a service companies, and we're known for that as well. So our positioning is very specific. It's visibly demonstrable. It's on the website, it's on our social profiles. All of the content that we publish is based around that. All of the conferences that I speak at are also SaaS conferences as well. They're not other kinds of conferences. So that would be somebody who'd be like relatively well positioned and niche down in terms of having a narrow niche, meaning we don't take on clients who are outside of this particular market that we serve. On the flip side of it, you'd have, if you are working with really any client that'll come through the door. So you don't have a specific who you do your what for. The second is that you solve a wide range of problems rather than a specific one. So if the client says, can you help me with X? And you say, yeah, we can. And even though you haven't figured out how yet, that would be an example of when your positioning is quite broad. One of the litmus tests that you might have a score that is in the red zone is when, if you think about whatever it is that you do, web design, SEO, PPC, content, whatever it might be in the digital realm, if you were to take your website and your main competitor's website, the one that you lose all the deals to, and you simply swap the logos, would your clients even know the difference when they go on the website? If the answer is no, they wouldn't know the difference because on the tin it all seems the same, then you're definitely in the red zone. If you have a specific niche that you're doing great work in, but at the same time you're not seen as a specialist agency and you solve too many different kinds of problems for the client, you might be in the yellow. But if you're in the green, then you're narrowly focused, you're a specialist, and you only solve a few problems really well.
Now, we're starting off on a point that at times can be controversial. And I know for a lot of agency owners, there's a lot of friction here of like, well, if we go narrower, then we're going to leave money on the table. And right. And it's this vicious cycle. It's this chicken and egg game, as you and I know, of like, well, to market more efficiently, we have to be more specific. And to be more specific, we have to not work with certain people and back and forth and so on. But why is this so critical? And why is this such a fundamental piece of building a scalable agency?
Yeah, so a few things, and you're absolutely right. The main worry that most agency owners have is, will this pigeonhole me? What will happen if I say no to all this other work that's going to come in? Here's what ends up happening. You can have two types of positioning. Vertical positioning, meaning like you work for the specific industry, lawyers, dentists, pharma, whatever. Or horizontal, and that could be like you're the marketing agency that is for millennials, let's say. Both kind of positionings work. It works the best when you have both horizontal and vertical focus. So for example, we chose to go vertical on SaaS and horizontal on demand generation specifically. You could do other things for SaaS, obviously. You could be the podcast agency for SaaS companies. One of my friends runs a company called Lemon Pie, and they do that exactly for technology companies. They help them launch podcasts. The flip side of it is, when you get a single client, that client does not lead to the next client because the types of referrals that they have, the networks that they actually spend time in, are not with the same types of people. And you don't get the ability to build on expertise that compounds. You solve one problem or 50 different problems one time, as opposed to one problem 50 times. And so it's that old adage of, do you want to be an inch wide and a mile deep, or would you rather be an inch, a mile deep and an inch wide, right? And so it's a trade-off for sure, but it's important because what it does is it creates more defensibility in your agency as well. One of the key concerns that I hear a lot of agency owners have is they think that their people, for example, they're always worried about how long they can hang on to their people, and retention internally is actually a big challenge. A lot of the time, the people that they end up having retain a lot of the knowledge about the processes. So it's tribal knowledge as opposed to knowledge that is publicly known and published and has standard operating procedures around it as well. So if you solve the same types of problems for many different kinds of businesses, then it's very hard to build that body of knowledge about the specific way you solve a specific problem for a different kind of client. And that's really why narrowing the niche often is one of the things that yields such a big dividend. And it seems scary. Remember, one of the things is we weren't always focused on SaaS companies, so we made the change relatively late in the game. We had a lot riding on the line for ourselves. What we found is that as soon as we changed the public positioning on our website and our content and so on, I don't mean to get woo on you at all, but maybe it was a law of attraction in some ways, where just the fact that the community, the clients, the marketing itself was so much more focused, it led to this extreme increase in our sales qualified leads who are coming in. And more it compounds over time. It's easier to go up market as well if you want to do that, where you want to maybe start with, maybe you're working with small businesses right now and you want to move mid-market or enterprise. You can do that because everything you do compounds on itself.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm going to double click on the operations side of this, of course, which is like everything gets easier from an operations perspective in terms of limiting edge cases, standardizing processes, scaling the team, scaling, protecting scope, protecting profitability. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons why this is super important. All right. So that's number one is under attract. We have narrow your niche. Let's move on to the next step.
Yeah. The second one is about build authority. And the question is, how easy is it for your clients to simply, quickly, and easily understand and accept why your agency is the best in the market to solve their problems? And when you have that amazing credibility, everything gets easier. And so the question really is around, what have you put in place to build that authority over time to be omnipresent in the minds of your ideal clients?
Awesome. And for more on this kind of concept, we have a great interview with David C. Baker, who literally wrote the book on expertise. Refer to that on the show. And so moving on to the next step, we've talked about under attract, narrowing your niche, right? And if you're listening to this, you're scoring yourself from 1 to 10 in each of these areas, building your authority. So how are you perceived as an authority for that particular niche? And the third one is
it's fill funnel. And so on fill funnel, the question really is, how successful is your marketing strategy to generate inbound leads from ideal clients and have them keen to engage in a dialogue with you? So the problem that most agencies have is that they simply don't have enough leads at all. And the leads that they do get, the high quality ones, tend to be referrals. And so it's this weird dichotomy between them not doing their own marketing and sales to be able to bring in high quality leads. Often when they do get leads, they're not the highest quality. And so they tend to really love referrals. We do too. There's nothing wrong with referrals. The problem is you can't snap your fingers and just have them generate overnight. We've got some systems for that in $1 Million Agency called Referral Getter, a way for pre-negotiating referrals actually with clients. So one of the things that we do, for example, is every client coming on board, we pre-negotiate referrals from them if certain milestones basically end up happening. So we know that they're happy, they're seeing results, they like the results and the relationship, and then there's a trigger that we actually have to get referrals. But filling funnel is really the ability to be able to, at will, get a high quality prospect to know you, like you, and trust you in terms of the work that your agency does, raise their hand, and then actually become part of your sales process. That means not just filling out a form or calling you, but willing to show up on time, willing to let you lead in the sales process, and then for them to actually have a conversation where they know what they want, they know when they want it, and that they want you to be able to help them with it as well.
Awesome. So that is fill funnel. I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time talking about why that's important. Everyone pretty much agrees on that. So that's area number one. Under attract, we have how good are you at, how good of a job have you done of narrowing your niche, building your authority, and then creating systems that fill your funnel. So once we've tackled the attract section, then we move on to convert. Tell us a little bit about that next section.
So now let's move on to convert, and let's talk about that a little bit. So the first step in convert is actually auditioning prospects. And this is a contrarian way to think about how to engage with a potential client. So the average agency has a contact us button on their site. They've got a little form which asks nothing. There's no real direction other than tell us what you want to think. And there's a send button. And so if you think about what comes in through that contact form, it's every type of potential request that you can get, right? And you don't know enough about the prospect, if they're a fit, what budgets they have. Very few prospects will come to you with a full-fledged brief that they'll give you. Instead, it's usually a couple of sentences. You don't really have an idea of who the prospect is. You hop on a phone call, and what happens typically is in the first 30 seconds, the prospect has taken the driver's seat, and now they're showing you, or they're asking you about questions like how big is your team, how much revenue you guys make, who do you work with, what kinds of services do you provide? So it's an interrogation session about you and your agency. And then they're doing that and taking some notes, and they're going to probably talk to another 3 to 5 agencies. So what ends up happening is you spend 45 minutes on the call, and at the end of the call, you've learned very little about them and whether they're a good fit and whether you're even able to help them. They've learned a lot about you, but that fact-finding mission could easily have been done if you put more content on the website. So what we want to do is flip this. It's a little bit like if you think about American Idol or any one of those shows where there's a judge and some contestants. Usually the agency is the contestant where the prospect becomes a judge. What we want to do is flip that role, and we want to audition our prospects instead. And so the question is, how compelling and repeatable is your sales process to move your client from I don't know who you are to we can't afford not to work with you? That's the transformation that you really want, where instead of having a loose process around conversion, you have a really locked in process that is your way of inviting and enrolling new clients on board.
Awesome. Now, for those of you that are listening, that sounds absolutely ludicrous to you, and I know that there's some of you that are sitting like thinking, like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, how is it that I'm going to get a client to be willing to jump through all those hoops when I can barely get them on a call today? Mm-hmm. And this all comes back to the attract side. If we've done a good job of positioning ourselves, building expertise, and having way more business that we have access to than we need, then we have the leverage to be able to actually start taking control of the sales process. And it's not only in your best interest, but often it's in the best interest of the client as well, because you can better serve them through that process.
Yeah. So the most contrarian thing that we found, about this whole process was when we started laying down the rules of engagement. And by the way, an audition prospect call is a 15-minute phone call. So it saves you the 45 minutes of non-fit prospects and gives you so much more time in the day. That's benefit number one around with it. But the second thing we found was that when we were jumping on the call with prospects, and we have a sales team that does this, by the way, what we find is that just by saying to them, hey, look, all we're going to do on this call is figure out if there's something for us to work on. If there is, we'll book a second session to talk about how. And if there isn't, I want to refer you to somebody in my network who can help. And there's no difficult decisions to be made on this call today. There's nothing to buy. Immediately, the guard that prospects have go down. They feel like they're being taken care of in the process by a professional. And that's all we're doing to change the frame of interaction in which prospects expect to have their buying process. Instead, what we're doing is we're showing them that we have a selling process that they fit into. And sometimes it's going to be a fit and sometimes it's not going to be a fit. But guess what? By the end of the 15 minutes, you will have known that if you're going to get that prospect enrolled into becoming a client, even if they don't. And that's where you get so much call control over the process and confidence that comes away from it as well.
Hey, it's Marcel here from Parakeeto, and I want to thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode and for being a listener of the show. We really appreciate you being here, and I hope you're getting a ton of value out of the episode. And if you are, do us a huge favor and leave us a review on iTunes, subscribe to the show, and share it with somebody else who you think might get some value. And if you are enjoying this kind of content, then I highly recommend you check out Parakeeto.com, where we've got tons of other free content like this and a bunch of great downloadable resources to help you grow your agency, like the Agency Profitability Toolkit, which is loaded with a bunch of great trainings, templates, cheat sheets, and other resources to help you improve your profitability fast. And it's helped hundreds of other agencies just like yours do the same. So with that, I'll let you get back to it. Enjoy the rest of the episode. Awesome. So that's number one, audition prospects. So if you're listening, rank yourself from 1 to 10. We'll move on to item number 2 under convert.
And what we're doing over here is really assessing how clear is the gaps that you can see from the problem that the client has and the payoff they're going to get? How compelling is it to them that your solution is the best way to close that gap and get to that payoff with as little risk as possible? And are you giving them options in your proposal? Typically, we like to do 3 different options, a low and a middle and a high. And all 3 of those from an options perspective give them a choice. And if you give somebody a choice between 3 things, it's not a yes/no decision anymore, or you never heard from them anymore decision. And that's happened to, I'm sure, all of us where somebody goes to you. Instead, they're going to go, you know what? Which of these options makes the most sense? and they're going to say option A, B, or C, not none of them make sense or all of them make sense. You're giving them a choice architecture to make great choices within, and all of the choices are something where they can always win, but they can never lose.
Awesome. All right. So on that, how good is your process for mastering proposals, engaging your clients in that proposal process? I love that one. And different way to think about it as well. If you want to listen to Blair Enns, he was on episode 15 of the Agency Profit Podcast. Highly recommend you check out his content as well around this. Some great thought leadership there. So item number 3 under convert is close consistently. Tell us about that one.
Yeah. So do you know what your close rates are right now, if you're listening? Most people don't. They make it up. They're not really clear about what that close rate actually looks like. And you should be tracking this number really well, because this is a number that helps you understand how effective you are at turning a conversation with a prospect into a closed client. So think about that close rate. If your close rates are, in the 20% range right now, you're probably in the red zone. If your close rates are closer to the 60% rate, you're probably in the green zone right now. If there's somewhere in between, you're probably yellow.
Awesome. And just for some context for everyone trying to figure out where they stand on that, that close rate is based on what? Marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads. When do you determine something when do you qualify something into that calculation?
Yeah, so we would think about it as the percentage or the number of prospects that are sales qualified leads that you actually engage with and develop a proposal for, and the number of proposals that get sent out and actually close. So for example, if you've had 10 great conversations with a client or a prospect in the last month, then you've only closed 2 of those 10 after sending out 8 proposals, you still end up having a 20% close rate. If that makes sense, right? By the time you get to a proposal, you should have an 80 to 90% probability of closing that particular prospect. Once you develop competency, you can even make it so that you never send a proposal unless you already know that they're going to close. So one of the things that we do is say, we'll only send you a discussion document if it makes sense to do so. And we're fundamentally aligned in principle on the direction of, both the terms, the investment, and the deliverables that we're going to be talking about related to any kind of program, really.
Awesome. So that is it for the convert section. So again, if you're following along and filling out the worksheet, add up your score, and we're going to move on to the last section, which is deliver. So we have attract, convert, and now deliver. Walk us through the deliver score.
Deliver is all about 3 things. One is being able to work your team and then the problem, and leverage your talent by delegating great work to them. The second is about productizing your IP so that there's a process that is yours. It's your methodology. It's rooted in facts and science, as opposed to words that sound great in marketing but really fall apart in delivery. And then finally, a process for systemizing wins. And this is all about being able to reduce that volatility that you have with clients. So, some clients really winning and some not so much. And you want to raise the bar. You want to raise the bar so that all of your clients have a greater average degree of success working with you. And you only do that by training your team on things like retention, referral, renewals, and revenue expansion as well. So that's what we're going to go through over here. Does it make sense to jump into leverage talent first?
Yeah, let's cover leverage talent and just demystify a little bit what that means.
The question really is, how consistently, effectively, and successfully do you delegate client success outcomes to your team, elevating their performance and making you the owner wanted but not needed? If you're in the position today where you could step away from the business for 2 to 4 weeks and the business would grow and there would be no client fires, you're in the green zone. If you are in a place where you are a hub and spoke model, where you're having to tell your team everything that they need to do and then follow up with them to see if they actually did it, then you're probably in the red zone right now. And so this is about putting in systems that stack on top of each other to help you get more done working on the business than being a pivotal part that's in the business.
Awesome. Very clear. Moving on to productize IP. I'm really interested in this one.
Yeah, this is all about taking your hive mind, that is the brain trust of everybody in your business, and getting them to create a structured and deliberate way of how you do things at your firm. And so the question is, how deliberate, structured, and compelling is your methodology for delivering client results? And does everyone in your agency know how to refer to this when marketing, selling, and delivering for clients? That second part's so important because a lot of firms may have a moniker, it's a 3-word thing like the growth scaling methodology or something like that. I'm completely making that up. So if that's your agency, I apologize. But if you have something like that and you only refer to it in your marketing and clients love it and they're coming on, they're incoming to clients to your team, but then the team never refers to it after, then it's moot point, right? So you want to make sure that you have the same terminology that you're coming up with, the same process documents, the same visual cues or archetypes popping up. One of the things that we do in our sales process is using a mind map for what we created. It's called the predictable growth methodology. We use it in sales, we use it in marketing, and we use it in delivery as well for doing things like our quarterly business review roadmaps, our annual planning with clients as well. So the same person who a year ago started with us by reading a blog post continues to see the same methodology throughout their life cycle working with the agency. And so you're green if that's kind of your case. If you're more red if you have a bunch of ideas and they're all kind of stuck in your head and you have not sequenced them into a system about the way your agency uniquely approaches the problems you solve.
Awesome. I love that one so much. And I think it's so core, and it ties back, of course, to what we talked about at the very top of the page under Attract, which is, how well can you articulate what you do, why you do it, and why you're better than everybody else at it. And having that transcend to the team and really become a core function of like how you operate, I think is super key. So last but certainly not least is systemizing wins. And this is something I think you do so well in your business. And it's such a powerful thing that a lot of people don't really think about in terms of like really displaying value to clients. I think this gets missed so much, is like we think that clients are aware of the value we create for them. And often we forget the importance of actually making sure that they're aware of that. So talk a little bit about systemizing wins.
Yeah. One of my, quick aside, one of my most popular tweets is, I just randomly tweeted out one day that more agencies are fired for their lack of communicating the value that they create than their actual ability to create it in the first place. So I have no doubt that if you're listening to this, you have a good agency delivering real results for clients. And often it's unfair, but you get fired as a result of not being able to communicate it. So what we want to do with Systemized Wins is really raise the bar on every single client that you're working with in the agency. The question is, how thoroughly, clearly, and effectively have you trained your team to be able to tap into a playbook of standard operating procedures to repeat successful outcome for every client that you work with? And so this is not about the superstars or the MVPs. You don't want to trust your people as process. You have people, you have processes, and then you have clients that you apply the processes to. So, they're a trifecta that end up working together as an overall system. This is about, have you taken the ideas out of your head about how to do something succinctly and strategically and sequence it in the right way? And have you built a means for being able to train your team and teach them how to fish, essentially, into a playbook that you can tap into time and time again?
Awesome. So with that concludes the deliver portion, which is the third and last kind of segment of this audit. So if you're listening, make sure your scores and add them up. And now, Dev, for those that are listening, what do they do now? What's the next step?
Yeah. So what you do now is you've got your scores, get the averages for the attract, the convert, and the deliver section, and to get an average from all of them. So for example, if you're a 6 on attract, you're an 8 on convert, and you're a 4 on delivery, add those all up, divided by 3, and that's your score. That's exactly where you're at right now. If you are in, if you have like between 10 being best in market, 1 being worst, the difference between 1 and 10 is many millions of dollars. Like you could literally be looking at a $5 to $8 million annual recurring revenue range. If you're, somewhere in the middle, for example, finding your next $1 million is just moving up 2 or 3 rungs in that ladder as you work through the way that you attract, convert, and deliver. And so this is a quick self-assessment. I mean, on the next page, you'll see what we call our $1 million agency model. And it just looks at, you can start coloring those red, yellow, and green parts in because now, you can look at it like a traffic light system. So if your score on fill funnel because you're not generating enough leads is a yellow, just color yellow in over there. by the end of it, you'll have a model which you've colored in, and you can start looking at the things that you actually need to build a $1 million agency. You'll also find that there's some outcomes. There's money, fun, and freedom, which are, I think, the main thing that all agency owners want. They want to help more people, have more fun, and make more money while doing it. Look at the areas that are the reddest and the yellowest. Those are the bottlenecks in the business that are holding you back from being able to scale and either find your first million or your next $1 million in the business. And so once you have that, if you work on those by yourself, whether it's from reading material online, you'll be able to work through those, and over the course of time, you'll be able to work through making those, from a red to a yellow and a yellow to a green, and you'll start seeing a couple of things will happen. Your revenues will go up, you'll have happier clients, your team's going to be happier, retention rates will go up, and then finally profitability will go up as well. And so that's what leads to that more money, fun, and freedom.
Amazing. So if you're listening, make sure you check out that last page and fill that model in. It's really, it's a cool way to visualize where the weak spots are in the agency, especially when you use this kind of color pattern. So I encourage you to fill that out. And finally, I want to talk about something that's super exciting for everyone, for me, for Dev, hopefully for you that's listening at home. Full transparency here, you're going to start hearing ads for the first time inside of our podcast. And this is a milestone moment for us. We have our first ever sponsor, and you guessed it, that sponsor is Basu. And part of what we're doing together here, it's interesting because I never thought that we would have a sponsor on the show. It's not something I'd ever considered until, Dev reached out and said, hey, what would it look like for us to do this together? And one of the criteria that I had was, it would have to be something that I would want to invest in. It had to be something that adds a tremendous amount of value to our audience, because I'm not prepared to, just sell our audience out to make a quick buck. And so we started having this conversation about what would this look like? How could we work together? And, we came up with this concept of recording the episode and creating a special offer that's exclusive to this group. And what Dev has been kind enough to offer us is the opportunity to schedule 30 minutes to go through this assessment with him. And what I want everyone to understand is this is not just going to be a pure sales call. Dev is a person that I go to for advice. I think I asked you for advice just a couple of weeks ago before we started having this conversation. There is a tremendous amount of value, if you haven't picked up on it already, of spending some time on the phone with Dev and having a chance to go through this audit, get some ideas, learn from the experience. And it'll also be an opportunity for you to learn more about whether or not working with Dev in his coaching program is a fit. So with all of that, Dev, for those that are interested in getting on a call with you, reviewing the audit, getting more clarity on where the opportunities are in their business, where can they go to check that out and take the next step, and what should they know?
Appreciate that, man. And it'd be my honor to help your audience figure out sort of wherever they're blocked in right now, even whether it's us working together directly or not, just to be of value and help them figure out what their next step might be. Where we'll be hosting this is on $1milliondolaragency.coach /assessment, if you want to just kind of skip the line and go straight to having a conversation. And then for the audit as well, Marcel, I'm sure you'll link up that on your site, but it'll also be available on $1milliondolaragency.coach /audit.
Awesome. So if you're listening and you're interested in checking out either the audit or you're interested in just connecting directly with Dev, scroll down. We'll have links in the show notes, or you can just, type in that URL in your browser. And what should people know, Dev, about you and what to expect when they get on this call with you?
Yeah, so we're going to look at a couple of different opportunities. First, we're going to go, broad. Tell me more about what's been going on in your business, where your situation is at right now. Then we're going to go deep and kind of look at what kind of factors are holding you back. You'll know some of those based off the self-assessment. We might have a conversation about what are the root causes that are surrounding that. And then we'll be having a chat about what you should be working on next to either fix it yourself, or if you want to run a little faster and shorten your learning curve, what working together might look like in terms of options. We've got the main thing that I think I offer is to make the boat go faster and to shorten that learning curve. And the key thing is not content. There's plentiful content on the web. I think the key thing is access. And that's the way that I work one-on-one with my clients. One of the coolest things about it is also an accountability practice. So every Friday I'll send out emails just kind of looking at, what are you planning for the week coming up? What are your wins for this week? And is there something that you want to share with me? And so if you want an accountability partner, that might be fun to talk about. And the second thing actually along with it is access. So one of the unique features of this coaching practice that I've evolved and it started in 2018 and now it's really in force is just 24/7 access to me. So if you use something called Voxer, if you heard of that before, all you need to do is just shoot me a Voxer message with whatever you're working on right now. And over the last 2 weeks, I've helped one of my clients secure two $10,000 a month contracts. So he's added $240K to his business. It's unique how that conversation kind of evolves. I never know what message will come in, but it's just fun to be able to get back to people really quickly and help them in the moment. So it's a just-in-time system as opposed to a just-in-case, like go watch these videos or hop on a weekly call for the sake of hopping on a call.
Amazing. So if you're listening and you're interested in connecting with Dev, you think you could benefit from even just getting on and getting some more clarity on where the opportunities are for you, I highly, highly encourage you to go down and take advantage of this. Dev is a person that is in high demand. I know that, from our connection inside of SaaS Academy, there's a lot of people that want to get on a call with you. That 30 minutes really does have true value. And, Dev, I know from my experience with you, you're the kind of person that serves instead of just selling. And so I promise you, if you spend that 30 minutes with Dev, you will walk away with something of value, something actionable, regardless of whether or not it ends up being a fit. So please do take advantage of this opportunity and check out that link. And with that, Dev, any final words of advice for everyone as we bring the show to a close?
No, man, let's just build some better agencies that are helping more people, having more fun, and making more money as a result.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. And for everyone that's listening, thank you for tuning in. Leave us a comment where you're listening to this and let us know what you took away. And with that, Dev, thank you so much for your time today, man. It's great to see you again.
Thanks for having me, bro.
That is a wrap. Boom. Well, that's all for today's episode, but it doesn't have to be the end of your learning journey. Make sure you subscribe to the show so you never miss another episode. And check us out at Parakeeto.com, where we've got tons of other amazing content and free resources to help you improve your profitability. With that, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next episode. Are you still here? You're leaving us a comment, aren't you? Yeah, or maybe you're subscribing to the show over here, or maybe you're watching the next episode, or maybe you're typing Parakeeto.com into your address bar. Now you're like, is somebody talking to me? Is somebody in my office? No, it's just me. This long outro.